Your search is over. You found Follow the Money with Mitch Moss and Pauly Howard on SiriusXM 204. Now listen up for Winformation.
I love this week. I love tonight. I always have NFL Draft Night. Always one of my favorite events of the entire year. And it's great because Michael Lombardi has 35 years of experience in the front office working for NFL teams, and he joins us in studio. He's going to be part of the Draft Betcast tonight. Good to see you again, man. How are you?
Good to be here. Yeah, it's great to be back. I really appreciate it. It's awesome. It's good to come back. It's a fun day. This is a great day.
So you also love tonight? You like the draft a lot?
I mean, look, I'm a draftnik. I was a fat kid at Hofstra. I used to take the train down into to the Sheraton Hotel and stand in line, and that's where I first met a guy by the name of Joel Bushbaum. You guys ever hear of Joel Bushbaum?
Pro Football Weekly.
Pro Football Weekly, yeah. I mean, and I met him, and he had one of those nasally voices that was typical of Brooklyn, but the guy was an encyclopedia, and it kind of got me started on this whole draftniks type of thing. So it's always been my favorite day.
Show people your ring.
Oh,
come on, look at that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
What does that weigh?
It's heavy. But you can't type with it. You can't do any work. I mean, I do it when I come out and do this, but it's kind of fun to, it's a great reward of knowing what went into that year. You look down and knowing all the things that you had to do to get that, to earn that. So it's kind of fun to have it.
I don't think we talked to you. We missed you, but were you surprised with what happened, how the Super Bowl played out? How the Patriots, the Rams couldn't move the ball on them?
Yeah, no, I wasn't surprised. I mean, when I was out here, I thought the under was really, I thought they would play really good. I thought that, look, the Rams are a great story because when they can do play action passes, they're really good. And they take Goff out of the game. I know they picked up their fifth option. This is a big night for the Rams because the Rams need to figure out how they can become more multidimensional. Where people really, what the draft is really about is trying to find multidimensional players that you could keep on the field and you don't have to substitute, and you force the defense to substitute. And the Super Bowl was a perfect example of that. So when the Rams were in their 12 personnel, one back, two tight ends, Gerald Everett was the second tight end. Belichick just thumbed his nose at Everett and said, "You're not a tight end. You can't block me. I'm going to put my nickel on the field and see how we do. And I'm not going to bite on your play action passes to any side of the field he's on." And the Rams' advantage was taken away. And because they didn't have Cooper Kupp, they can't get into an 11 game, which is one back, one tight end. So that's what this is all about. The Rams will draft a tight end in this draft at some point that they feel like can be more multidimensional because that cost them.
So I'm not going to go as far to say it's like the NBA where it's like positionless basketball right nowadays, but is football kind of similar, or is it becoming that way?
It is. So you used exact terms. So when Belichick and I were in Cleveland, we sat behind the bench of the Cavs. David Modell, the former owner of the Browns, had these great seats behind. This was out in Richland Coliseum, way out there, before they built the downtown arena. And we were playing the Bulls. The Cavs were playing the Bulls. Lenny Wilkins was the coach. And it was fascinating for me to watch because he had Pippen, he had Jordan, right? He had all these players. And so when Wilkins would substitute, he would substitute Pippen or Jordan. He would just move them. So Pippen would go from the 4 to the 1, right? And Jordan would go from the 2 to the 3. And all of a sudden now Lenny has to resubstitute again. You see, he could never catch up to him because he had multidimensional players. That is at the essence of where the Patriots were so great when they had Hernandez and when they had Gronk, or when they had Gronk or Martellus. But whenever they have those combination of tight ends that can do both, they become much more difficult to defend.
What do you think Bill does tonight?
I think Bill's going to sit there. I mean, I don't think Bill knows what he's going to do tonight because who could tell? I mean, the draft is going to be as it plays out. I mean, like there's a guy, Titus Howard from Alabama State, who nobody's talked about in the mock drafts, okay? Everybody in the league's talked about it. He's had about 20 visits to different teams, right? So you just know that there's going to be something that happens in the draft that you can't predict for because nobody's, everybody's talking about the same guys, but the reality of it is the league's not talking about those same guys.
Yep, it happens every year where a player is going to slide.
Yeah.
Like last year, I thought it was Derwin James, where he was available for the Chargers that late in the first one. I'm like, who had this? Who saw this coming?
Right. No, it happens all the time. And then, of course, we're going to have to listen to Mel go completely berserk because nobody's following his board, which is absolutely insane because, like, what board has he ever put? There's no draft room, So, it's funny. I talk to kids as they get ready for the combine, and I put up someone's, and I'm not going to name who it is, mock draft 3.0 from 3 years ago. And I tell the kids, who's not in the first round? And the kids are really smart. They figure it out pretty quickly. They say, oh, Mahomes isn't in the first round. I said, exactly. Mahomes, the MVP of the league, is not in the first round, and yet you're going to let this guy judge your career moving forward? Come on, seriously. Seriously. You can't miss that bad on a mock 3.0. You can't miss that bad.
No, it's terrific. You're right. You can't.
You can't miss that bad.
No,
I mean, you
and
either know he's a first rounder or you don't. It's like, and so when a guy like Titus Howard or Keneal Harry gets drafted in the first round, guys that are really good football players, and they're not on your board as the high because you have DK Metcalf as the number one receiver, who runs 3 routes, right? One thing we know about receivers, if you run 3 routes, you ain't playing. Okay, that's a fact. You're not playing. I don't care how fast you are. You're not playing. Darius Haywood-Bay ran 3 routes. He couldn't play. The kid, Kevin White from Chicago, who's now in Arizona, he runs 3 routes. He can't play. You can't be a 3-route receiver and play in the NFL.
What are you buying? What do you call BS on some of these? What Arizona maybe don't know what they want to do with number 1, and then Snyder apparently wants to trade up in the top 5 where they love Haskins.
I don't know why they would have to get into the top 5 to get Haskins.
That's what I thought.
I think, to me, I wrote about this for The Athletic today. I think the team that if I were the Redskins I would target would be the Lions. The Lions can't pick a tight end at 7. I'm not sure they don't get a true Y at 7, so they would move back to 15 easily. And I think at 7 you're guaranteed to get Haskins, and I think good luck. I mean, look, Haskins is not a rhythm thrower. Jay Gruden's offense is a West Coast offense. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, bang it. You got to have anticipation in the throw. That's not Haskins. Haskins holds the ball, has to wait for receivers to get open. I think it's going to be interesting. Darryl Rovell tweeted something out today that just reminded me. He had Sports Illustrated had a picture of 3 quarterbacks: Blaine Gabbert,
Christian Ponder.
No, Blaine Gabbert, Cam Newton, and Jake Locklear, and said it's the NFL debate. Who's the best one? I mean, seriously? Who's the best one, right? But that was then. Everybody was talking about them. I thought Jake Locklear should have been a running back in college. I thought he should have been, and I was not a Jake Locklear fan. I was more, and I like Gabbert more, but I mean, Cam was clearly the better player. I think this draft is a little bit like that. I think a lot of these quarterbacks are going to end up being more backup than starters.
What would you do if you're Arizona?
I would pick Quentin Williams, because here's the thing, when you hired Cliff Kingsbury, you hired Cliff Kingsbury to save Josh Rosen. No different than when the Rams hired Sean McVay to save Jared Goff. Actually, Josh Rosen's had a better rookie season than Jared Goff did. Okay, you could easily
That's fair.
You could easily make that case. So why would I turn? I've traded a 3 and a 5 to move up to pay $20 million for this kid, and all of a sudden I'm going to change because this coach, who's supposed to be a quarterback guru, right? He's a quarterback whisperer. He didn't say I can only coach one quarterback. He said I can coach all quarterbacks. So I would take the best player. I think Keim in his 7th year, who's not had very good drafts, I think he's got to look at that and make a decision.
Well, the wild cards, the Raiders, and also Mayock. I mean, what do you with all these picks here? What they do? They might trade down. I don't know, but I don't know.
There's no way Gruden's not trading down. Look, the Raiders offseason, to me, the best way I can describe the Raiders offseason to you is like a guy who goes to the grocery store without a list and just starts throwing things into the cart. Yeah. I mean, that's the best way I can describe it.
And you're hungry.
Yeah, and you're hungry.
Right.
And there's no reason for it. You traded away one of the best pass rushers because you said you can't afford to sign him, and then you turn around and sign a 31-year-old receiver who has some issues. There's no denying it, and he is a great player. And you give him just a little bit less than you were going to give that pass rusher. And then, oh, by the way, you then sign another receiver, Terrell Williams, and you pay him as much. So if you combine those 2 salaries, you could have easily kept Mack, right? And then you bring in 6 receivers this offseason for draft potential because you're telling everybody, we're going to draft another receiver too. Like there's no methodology to the draft bill. Belichick talks about this all the time. We are not collecting talent. We are building a team. The Raiders are trying to collect talent.
Okay, so at number 4, a couple of things here. If Murray is still on the board and he's not taking number 1 overall.
Unless you have really strong seatbelts, Gruden's turning that card in.
You think so?
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt. Yeah. I don't think there's any doubt. I think the one thing Gruden is the Will Rogers of scouting. He loves every player when he scouts them until he has them. That's when the disconnect happens. And I think that he sees, I mean, I know this. He sees Murray as unbelievable.
As the guy.
And I don't think he's in love with Carr. I don't think he's in love with Carr.
Are you? He was an MVP candidate before he got hurt a few years ago.
I'm not in love with Carr.
No.
I think Carr has to be handled differently. I worry about Carr throwing the ball down the field. This year he threw the ball down the field better than he had. But I worry about
Charlie Checkdown.
He always has been Charlie Checkdown. I've always felt like his eye level is down. Quarterback's eye level is the most important thing you look at. That's why yards per attempt is so important. And his eye level is always down. What the left tackle did, I think the Raiders' offensive line was problematic too.
Peter King talked to you. He had a good quote in Monday's article. What do you think of the Raiders and saying get the scouts out of here, kicking them out?
Look, I don't have a problem with that at all. Mike's new, right? So when Mike comes in, all those guys see Mike come in. Mike's never really, the NFL scouting community is pretty much of rank and file. You got to work your way up to earn respect within it. You got to be, and Mike just came flying in, and he basically landed on third base.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of animosity by the former scouts. They were Reggie guys, so to have them in the room is not going to be really good. And look, scouts are not decision makers. That room should only be decision makers. The Patriots room has about 4 people in it, people that are going to make the decision. If Belichick wants to talk to a scout, he'll bring the scout in the room. He's there, but he's not. His job is to scout. Do your job, and I didn't really have a problem with it. I've been critical of the Raiders all season. That's one of the things I haven't been.
Yeah, this probably happens more often than we would actually know about.
Yeah, I mean, look, I know scouts feel like, we should be in the room, but half the time stuff gets out.
Why?
Yeah,
why would they do that?
Because they think if I help this reporter, then he's going to promote me and get my name in the paper, and I'm going to be a GM fairly soon. It's all self-serving and motivational.
But doesn't that hit him or destroy his reputation moving forward? Then?
Well, nobody knows he's doing it
Because it's anonymous.
It's anonymous. I mean, there's a GM today for a team that's probably one of the greatest leakers of all time. We all know it. Everybody in the league knows it. Guy can't turn down an interview. And you just know it. I mean, some of these guys can carry the Southern primaries. You used to be able to win the presidential election, you had to carry the Southern primaries. Some of these guys can carry the Southern primaries.
Can you tell the Al Davis story?
Which one?
Which one? Which one? How he would treat draft day? We put in the notebook?
Oh, he just Al hated. So really, for me, working at the Raiders, I felt like I was back to the future, right? So without the flux capacitor. So when I would walk into the Raider draft room, literally I would leave the year I was in, say 2000, and I would enter 1965. Boom. Right there I was, and it was 65. I mean, Al Locasell was on the telephone. Right? No one had a computer internet in the room. We were using no magnets on the board, no players. Mickey Marvin, the late great player for the Raiders, had great handwriting, so he would write. And Al would tell him to go to, Mickey, go to the board. And Mickey would go to the board. Mickey, write Mitch down there. No, too big, Mickey, erase it, start all over. And then Mickey would write it perfectly, and he would write the board. And then at the end of the night, he would erase the board. And he would only have it in his book. He would have notes in his book. He wanted no one to see. Wasn't allowed to clean the room. There'd be garbage in the room. Nobody could go into the room. We couldn't even let Run come in and clean it. It was truly 1965. But Al had his way of doing it. He didn't want anybody to know what was going on. He had everybody in the room, but he didn't want everybody to know what was going on.
Wow.
Jesus.
Okay, we'll continue talking about the draft coming up tonight. Michael Lombardi, great answer so far today. Players that you're high on, players that you're not so high on, and what some of the other teams, top 10 in the first round, can expect to do tonight here on VSiN.
It's been between 2 and 3 minutes. You know what that means. It must be time for more Follow the Money with Mitch Moss and Pauly Howard on SiriusXM 204.
We'll continue here. One more segment. Michael Lombardi. He's also going to be on the NFL Draft Betcast tonight right here on VSiN. It's going to be great, along with JVT, Matt Humans, Bruce Marshall. As the draft is going on, they will talk about the props that have cashed. We'll talk about power ratings and how they might change, future prices on teams as well. You can check it out tonight, 8 Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific here on VSiN.com, the VSiN app, SiriusXM 204, Sling TV, and Fubo TV. Okay, so you've thrown out some names of guys that nobody is really talking about at this point. Who else do you like that might go top 10 or in the first round that others might not be as high on, and guys that you're just like, nah, you know what, I don't see it with him?
I think Devin White is really a good player, the LSU linebacker. And I think Devin White's a perfect example of where the NFL game's going. 5 years ago, a Mike linebacker really wasn't really coveted. In fact, in our grading system in Cleveland and in New England, a Mike linebacker that could only play 2 downs could only get graded to a certain level. And usually that level would have met 3rd or 4th round. But this kid can play on 3 levels. He can play deep in the middle of the field if he has to play Tampa 2. He can rush. He can play behind the line and stack. And then he can attack the pocket, which is so critical. And when your Mike linebacker is fast, your defense is fast. So whoever gets this kid is going to improve their defense leap and bounds. I mean, if I were in Oakland and I had a choice between Ed Oliver and Devin White, I would take the linebacker, because the other factor, what I don't think fans understand, when your Mike linebacker is really good, your red zone defense is really good because he can cover so much. And as the field shrinks, the speed of your Mike linebacker, it's a little bit like Syracuse's 2-3 zone, and the length of their 2-3 zone, they're really a 3-3 zone. Well, when your Mike linebacker is so fast, he can help you play really good in the red zone. And ultimately, that is one of the keys to the red zone. So I think he's undervalued. Now, I know Tampa, he's going 5th, but I think he's really, like Roquan Smith last year, I thought was really going to be a good player. I think that's really going to be a change. I love Jeffrey Simmons, the defensive tackle from Mississippi State. And he's got the video of his young time. I think it might have been in high school or his freshman year. That's very disturbing. However, that being said, he's been perfect. And nobody at Mississippi State talks ill about the kid. They love the kid. He's coming off the ACL, which to me is not an issue. Actually, I think his knee will be stronger, the way they repair ACLs today. I think he's a dominating inside defensive tackle.
What did you think of the Russell Wilson deal?
I was surprised by it. I really was. I was surprised because I think Russell had his best protection this year in his offensive line, and he had one of his worst years throwing the football. You know, Russell struggles to see. I mean, it's a fact. You know, and I've been told reliably, Steve Keim has called. You know, Steve Keim was calling teams around the league, that friends of his, to ask him about small quarterbacks. And I'm sure he probably talked to John Schneider, the general manager up in Seattle. And the reality of it is Russell has trouble seeing. That's it. Now, Russell makes plays. When the play breaks down, Russell's great. But everybody knows when the play breaks down, Russell's great. So they keep the play from breaking down. I was surprised by it. I think it's one of those situations where you get into this really tough spot. If I don't pay him, what do I do? I don't have a solution. It's Andy Dalton. What do I do? I think the Bengals could easily draft a quarterback.
Yeah.
But typically, what do? I either pay this guy or I don't pay this guy, because then I'm Minnesota and I'm paying $85 million for Kirk Cousins.
How about Kansas City, all these changes? They get rid of Sutton already. They Spagnuolo, the new defensive coordinator. They're going to change what they run. Ford's out. They get rid of they bring in Honey Badger.
The deal for Clark, gave up a bunch for him.
Houston's out. I mean,
I think it's an interesting locker room. I mean, I think Tyreek Hill, that situation still has to be resolved at some point. I know he's been cleared of all charges, but there's something happened there. And I think the NFL's got to take a look at it, because he did not get any penalty for what occurred at Oklahoma State. And this is what, for me, everybody, John Dorsey picked Tyreek Hill. What a steal in the 5th round. Timeout. Look, my wife could scout Tyreek Hill in Oklahoma State, okay? He was a 1st or 2nd round. He was a starting talent, okay? The reason he went in the 5th round is no one had him on the draft board. He was on the sideboard. And I think that, and they've taken these chances of character guys in Kansas City, and they've been able to even Kelsey was a character issue. And I think they've been able to skirt. Now, Frank Clark's another guy. Frank Clark's a really talented player. Michigan had issues. They're collecting a bunch of guys in that locker room, and you're wondering, wow, how's this all going to play out?
Do you think we get all 4 quarterbacks to go in the 1st round tonight?
Yeah, it's interesting. When you go back and study the last 3 drafts, there have been 10 quarterbacks picked in the last 3 drafts in the 1st round. 9 of them have been as a result of trades. Only one, Baker Mayfield, has not been a result of the trade. Now, 3 of them, when you look at Goff and Wentz, that trade happened before the draft even started. But typically, to get a quarterback, you got to trade for him. So if we get 4 in the 1st round, which, if you get Murray, you get Locke, you get Jones and Haskins, that's 4. You're going to have 4 trades. Now, if Murray doesn't go 1, you'll have 3 trades. But typically, you're going to see 4 trades at least, because that's typically what happens.
Okay. Any chance Greer somehow slides into the 1st round?
I don't think so. I mean, it would not surprise me, and here's why. Because if New England or the Rams want to get out and you want to pick Greer in the 2nd round, say you're a team that wants to pick, say the Giants, and you have a high 2nd round pick, and you want to pick Greer, you're better off trading to get that 5th-year contract.
Of course, yep.
To get into the 1st round than sitting there waiting. So I would not say it's impossible. I think this draft is interesting. I do think, I'm not a Haskins fan whatsoever. I think somebody's going to make a mistake with Haskins. I think that Daniel Jones is a good player. I just don't know if he's got enough to be a great player. But that being said, I think there's a lot of quarterbacks in this draft, Will Grier being one of them, Stidham from Alabama being another, that have backup potential that could advance to become potential starters. I think that's really what this quarterback class is.
If one of the quarterbacks is still on the board at pick number 30, where Green Bay's at, do they go quarterback this year?
I don't think so.
No?
I don't think so. I think Green Bay would be more inclined to try to keep fixing their team. I think that's what they would try to do. Although, look, I don't think they want to rock that boat with Aaron Rodgers. I don't think they want to keep rocking that boat. That's just my gut feeling on it. That would be a smart move, but that's just my gut feeling.
All right.
Great job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent answers.
That's good to be back, guys. Good to have you.
Yeah,
We'll
good to
listen
see you
tonight.
Yeah, the Betcast is going to be phenomenal. Again, 8 Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific right here with Michael Lombardi, part of the coverage as well. Up next, more on the NFL draft and more on the Oakland Raiders specifically with Ed Graney, covers the team here locally. We'll talk about it next here on VSiN.
More of Follow the Money with Mitch Moss and Pauly Howard is on the way. But don't get left out on VSiN's new Point Spread Weekly. Find out more at VSiN.com.